Good afternoon, my dear friends. I want to start with the parsha, Lech Lecha, by discussing the words, the first verse of the portion, which it states, the first two verses, Vayomer Hashem el Avram. God says to Avram, Lech Lecha, you go, me'artzecha, mimolatecha. You go from your land, your birthplace, mebeis avicha, from the house of your home, el haaretz asher areka, the land that I will show you. I'll make you into a great nation. And I will bless you. Make your name great. And you will be blessed. And I was, for me, especially today, it's very hard to read these words without thinking about the special Shabbat that we had this past week in Catania. The words Lech Lecha for Avram, they were a call to travel from his homeland to the land of Canaan and establish a spiritual home for his family. Of course, this is the meaning of these words. This is the powerful meaning of these words. Lubavitcher Rebbe, in his Chumash, in the Chumash attribute to the Rebbe, they have an introduction to every parsha, and they write there that it says in the beginning of this parsha, I'll read it as a quote, it says, no, it would not be an exaggeration to say that the two words that open this parsha, Lech Lecha, are the two most important words ever spoken in history. With these words, God set Abraham on a course that would reverse the process of degeneration that humanity had been locked into ever since the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. And it would eventually lead to the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. So that's true, but it's also in a limited sense, because elsewhere the Rebbe writes, go to you. This instruction to Abraham is also an instruction for every individual. Go to you. Return and connect to the real you, to your essence and the spiritual root. Meaning to say, go on a journey and discover who you really are. And that was part of what we experienced this past Shabbat in Catania, as we watched a community that was discovering who they really are. Really, a community is made up of individuals who are discovering who they really are. So let me just share with you for just a few minutes the story of what we saw this week, this Shabbat in Catania, that back in 1492, the Jews were expelled from Spain. And not only were they expelled from Spain, they were also expelled from anywhere they were in the kingdom of Spain, and that included Sicily. So Jews were expelled from Sicily, and Sicily, we learned on Shabbat, was actually a very, very big Jewish community all over Sicily, because it was an important sea. It was an island on the Mediterranean Sea, so it was very important for traveling and for merchants, and so it was a very established Jewish community there. These Jews were expelled, and from 1492 until this past Shabbat, there actually was not a Torah scroll that was permanently housed on the island of Sicily. So what happened was, however, over the last few years, there was the publication by the Spanish government of the names of the families of the Jews who were expelled, and many of those people did not leave. They had a choice. You can either leave the land or convert to Christianity. And many people, even very pious people, actually decided to convert to Christianity, but secretly to keep the faith of their Judaism. So, for example, even the great Rabbi Abar Bernal, whose works we study so often, when we and I see Aya here, and of course, Sicily, a lot of the people from Sicily had relations with the people of Tunisia, which is also important. But the people from many of the people who converted, their children who left, their children stayed behind. So Abarbanel, the great commentary, his own son stayed and converted. And of course, this was heartbroken. And the Abarbanel writes that he expects that before the final redemption comes, all those people who converted to Christianity will return to the Jewish people in full. And throughout the years, even up until the present period, the descendants of these conversos were guarding their Judaism in secret rituals, which they themselves didn't understand because they were cut off from the organized Jewish community. It was before the internet. So, for example, often the women would light Shabbat candles, and they didn't know why. It was passed down that every woman from our descendants for 500 years, we light candles on Friday night. Or the males from a family were always circumcised. And so even though in Catholic communities, they were not being circumcised, but in Sicily and in other communities, the males were descendants of conversos were being circumcised. And one of the professors who spoke to our group on Shabbat said he went through the towns, and for many years he found Jewish names amongst those towns, amongst the towns where Jews lived, and they converted, but they kept their allegiance. So when Spain published the names of the families that were expelled and also some that remained, there was a tremendous interest amongst the people who were still in Sicily, who looked at those names and saw their own names. And they saw that they were historically Jews. And some of them underwent a formal conversion. Even though they were historically Jewish, they underwent a formal conversion. And in fact, I was just talking to somebody today who was very involved with this, and he believes that there are hundreds of thousands of conversos who would be interested in somehow or another returning to the Jewish faith. So one of these people, his name was Benito, asked me if I could be of assistance in helping them find a Torah scroll. Benito came with a man named Michael Odin, helping them find a Torah scroll for their synagogue. How did they have a synagogue on Catania? Because Catania has no Jewish community for over 500 years. But this man, Benito and Michael Odin, several years ago, they went to the mayor of Catania and they asked him if he could donate a specific home from the municipality, a specific building for the purpose of a synagogue. This building from the municipality has a story. It was built in 1911, and it's the tallest building in Catania. And on the top of it is Stars of David. And the story about this building is it was built in 1911 by a man who had one daughter. Her name was Angelina. And he desired he was building this beautiful building on the highest point in the city with the Stars of David to be a mark of Jewish pride. And he wanted to give it to his daughter to strengthen and build the Jewish community for her wedding. And the only problem with this plan was that the daughter did not want to marry the man her father wanted. And so after the building was built, I don't know if it was on the day of the wedding or soon before the wedding, she went to the roof of the building and she, in a dramatic fashion, she took her life, and the father was devastated, and he never moved into the house. So this building. So for many years after that, the building was unused, and the Nazis came in, and the Nazis took over this building and made it their headquarters in Catania, or perhaps in all of Sicily, because it was the highest point. And so therefore it was what the Nazis chose. And even though there was the ashes of the volcanoes that came down, this building was never threatened because it was too far away from the volcano ashes, and also it was the highest point, so it was the safest for that point. So then this building was owned by the municipality after the Nazis left, but this man Benito and Michael Odin, they convinced the city to give this building back to the Jewish community to be a synagogue. And it's a beautiful, beautiful 4-story building, very high, and it houses the synagogue of Catania. And they needed a Torah scroll. So before I left Ohav had some Torah scrolls that needed to be repaired. So before I left, they agreed to give. I asked the board, and they agreed to give one of the Torah scrolls to the Jewish community of Catania. And so when we went there, we saw that they're building a community of families who are reawakening their connection to their ancestors. Lech Lecha, go back, as the Rebbe said, go back to who you really are. Find out your true source. Find out where you're coming from. And that's the powerful concept of what we're able to learn on this concept of Lech Lecha. Don't be afraid to go within your heart and within your soul to discover your soul, to discover who you really are. So when I read these words this week, that's something that immediately came to mind. Anyway, I'll stop the recording here. If people have questions about this, I'll be happy to address them.